All right, well, today we're going to try to answer some really important questions for you around how to actually implement what is good password protection. So we got the Cover Your Password series here, and what I want to discuss is some practical, real things that you can do that are easily accessible. I mean, here at Level Up Strategies, really important to us, 2 parameters: easy to succeed, hard to fail. So I'm Brandon Farr. I'm working with Level Up. We're going to do this here for you. This is free. There's no ads, just because we want to help. So it's our commitment to help share with you the best of what we've learned as an organization that you can apply in your own context. So this is geared towards you as an individual. The same principles will apply if you're in a business and you're responsible for business infrastructure. But from where we stand, we figured out that the information that you want to protect as an individual to keep somebody from taking it and using it for their benefit, think identity fraud or financial theft. If I can get into your financial account, I could take your money and run away with it. There's also people impersonating other people, again, through identity theft. There's also people doing ransomware these days. And what that means is that your important information gets stolen or locked up with an encrypted password through malware that plugs up your entire computer and syncs up to your cloud, and it freezes your cloud. And then you got to pay money in order to get your information back, and that's really expensive and rather inconvenient. So as we jump right in with those things in mind, we figured out that the information that you want to protect is broken into a couple of key categories. So let's just jump in here. So one of the things you're going to want to protect is documents. Another thing is your financials. And what else? Another one. We got some SOCIAL. Got some notes here. We got like social capital. Thank you. And communication. I intentionally left things out like commerce, shopping, because you don't control Amazon.com's website. So, and when you go to their website and use your credit card, you're not responsible for defending that private information. It's your information, it's your credit card, but that ultimately falls into Amazon, their jurisdiction to protect. Whereas you as a person, this is the stuff that you want to protect. So with that in mind, if you're a business that processes people's payments, then commerce might be a line here for you because you're managing people's private or personal information. Medical or dental records, these important personal medical things are also, there's a section there, but for general sense in this, we'll put that in the document category. So what I realize is all of our general information falls into important stuff. Wait, you have important information. This could be the family tree that you've spent years curating. It could be your last will and testament. It could be share or stock certificates in the companies that you've invested in. These are important things that you're hanging on to, and they're in your computer right now, or you wouldn't have them. Think about your downloads folders or things that you've chosen to collect. That's documents. Your financials. This is your bank accounts, your investment portfolio, things that you access in the financial space, your social capital. I mean, it's a big deal these days if somebody can get into your Facebook account, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're using. I know there's people that intentionally steal those things, especially from celebrities, or if you have a following, or you have a sourdough bread making following and then somebody hijacks your Instagram. That's a big problem, because you might have spent years getting 100,000 followers and they're instantly gone because you're locked out of your own account. You don't want that to happen. And then communication here. This was another thing. Emails. Like, our ability to connect and relate to one another is really important. And it also occurred to me that if you'd probably hesitate to give me the password to your Gmail account or your Hotmail account or whatever, because that's personal, and the free flow of communication information, even though the emails that you sign up for to send and receive in themselves might not be super private, the bulk of them, like the substance of them, truly is valuable, and the freedom that you have to send and receive is really important. So, and I know this because I've had, I'm going to say, malware attempts to our company because somebody hacked into another person's email address. They impersonated that person. In our case, it was an engineer, and there was an email sent to his entire contact list that had an Excel document attached to it, and that was a malicious, that was a virus in that Excel document. I could just tell by the tone of the email that something was off, so I picked up the phone and I called the engineering firm, and sure enough, they said, "Hey, look, somebody hacked in, and they've done this across our organization," and so on. That for me was an example of, if somebody can infiltrate your communication, they can have a lot of influence in your space, but also in the space of all your contacts. So that's why it's worth protecting. So what seemed appropriate to me is that we protect all these things, right? We put a barrier up here, and those are passwords. But my experience in my own organization showed me that not everything in our four major categories here is protected super well. And as an example, your computer has a PIN to get in, right? That's how you get in. You memorize your PIN, whether you're using Mac or Windows. And just for our sake, I'm going to reference Windows. I use a MacBook Pro. I have an iPhone. I have an iPad. I like to keep things in the ecosystem because there's a sense of continuity for us. So that's what we've done as a business. And I have some confidence in I'm going to say the data security privacy that the Apple hardware offers and their software as an ecosystem. Okay, that is what it is. But I still, boom, turn the computer on. You click your user, and then you got to enter your password. So the strength of that PIN determines whether or not you can get in to my computer. Once you're into my computer, you could browse the files. So hacking into all the files that I hold on my computer is as simple as understanding the PIN on my desktop, the PIN on your desktop, which for some people is just a pain in the butt. Every time I turn on my computer, I have to enter this. I just want to get that out of the way. When you go to your banking app, you got to enter your complicated password. Fine. But your computer PIN is really the gateway to a large chunk of really important information. And there's more to this, and we'll get to it in a moment. Your financial information is often controlled by a password. I'm going to say, hopefully it's a complicated, high-strength password. Now I'm going to pause here for a moment. I want to do this in orange. We're going to differentiate passwords here. And in another video, I described how I used to have a password. It's very simple, similar to I used Charlie 1, or Charlie 1 exclamation mark, depending upon whether or not I used a capital letter, a special character, and a number. So just for an example, capital C, Charlie 1 exclamation mark. To me, that's a low quality password. If your password resembles anything like this, there's a vulnerability. If you're going to have a high strength password, it's going to resemble something like *_1 HAZ PJ_ exclamation mark @, which is all those randomized passwords that your password keeper, if you have one, or your iCloud keychain is going to suggest for you. The thing is, there's no hope you're going to remember this sort of password if you have that sort of password for each one of your important information, because inside your financials you might have two different banks and an investment portfolio, or 4 investment portfolios, or financial institution for your business or your personal. So how are you going to remember all these? You can't. So you need to keep them somewhere. I hope you don't have a note on your computer or a sticky note on your wall with your important passwords. That's just too vulnerable. But my answer to that, go back 6 years, was I need a password for everything, but I can't remember all these passwords, and I didn't understand what a password keeper was. So I had a password like this. And that was my version of answering the sign up with a username and password. And I didn't understand the complexity of my ecosystem, and also the importance of my ecosystem. As I've grown in business and personal, the value of my personal and business infrastructure has grown, so it's worth protecting in a way now that more than it was before, and it'll be worth protecting more in the future than it is even now. So nonetheless, another big condition has changed, and I think this is what brought us as an organization, me personally, and then ultimately this video, is we're in a day and age where computers through machine learning are able to hack your computer system faster than humans ever could in the past. So there's compounding exponentially greater computing power these days, which means that all of our passwords are just easier to decrypt. And because password is just a math problem, it's a password problem that computers are really good at solving. So 6 years ago, they didn't have mass learning computers in the same way hacking people's infrastructures. Also, just so I don't feel like any person these days, any business in North America is below the radar of a hacker out there. You're not Coca-Cola, you're not IBM, you're not Microsoft, so I have nothing to worry about. I don't think we can say that anymore, just because computers aren't discriminating. So here we are. The more complicated the password, the harder it is for computers to hack. So step one is have a way to have complicated randomized passwords. You're going to hear me talk about a password keeper from time to time in this discussion, because I do think, and we have as an organization got a password keeper that has all of our different passwords, which means that if we have one mega password, we can get into our password keeper, which files all of our other passwords. That does create a vulnerability for us. I'll acknowledge that. If you can get into my password keeper, you can get into my everything. True. So what are the odds of that happening? And we make sure it's complex enough that it's not easy for you or a computer to do so. So there's a measure of safety for us that far outweighs the randomized ad hoc version that many people manage their passwords, and they're important information. So I like a password keeper. There's a few good ones out there. I just go with one that's reputable, pay the money. If it doesn't cost you money, it's a free service. Question it, because you're the thing they're selling if they're not charging you money. So this is one of those things that I've decided is well worth paying for, particularly in the realm of if I have information or passwords that I want to share with somebody else. So my wife, if we share a bank account, so if I use my Apple iCloud keychain that really works for my computer and my phone and my thing, and I can do my Apple iPad to go a complicated password, but the complication comes in sharing that password with my wife, who has a different Apple ID to log into the financial, and then the keychains don't see each other. So there's some complication there. So we've gone with a overall password keeper that lets us share passwords, and so when one updates, it updates for everybody. Just makes it simpler, because one of the challenges, easy to succeed, hard to fail, always inside of those parameters. If the system becomes too cumbersome, people will get frustrated using it and they'll stop using it, and that's where screw it, I'll just go back to the one I can remember, and I'll write it on a sticky note and I'll put it on the side of the wall next to my computer, not realizing that while you're on Teams, they can see that, and it's just whatever the deal is. The system needs to be simple. It needs to be easy for other people to use. The people that you want to use it should be able to freely use it. So make sure as you're setting up whatever password system you choose, make sure that it's something that you can scale going forward and you won't be frustrated with in the future. So that being said, complicated passwords are where it's at. You'll never remember this, you need a password keeper. The risk comes in if you use the same complicated password, whatever version of this is, and you use it for the same thing. Like if you have the same complicated password for your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, your Snapchat, and somebody gets the one password, they get everything. Don't let that happen. Have a different randomized complicated password for each of your things, so that, let's pretend they find some way to get into your Facebook they can't take your Snapchat too. Okay, so And that way you can quarantine different things. Quarantine's a loaded word these days. You can isolate different things from impact if there is a compromise in some way. And there's things like, Facebook gets hacked and all the user information gets like that. That's a real thing, which is also, you're going to watch me. Here's a don't do. Don't sign in with Facebook's and sign in with Google and sign in with Apple. These are all things. I intentionally don't do that, and I don't have to do that because I have a password keeper. And the reason I don't want to do that is because if Facebook gets hacked, or my individual credentials to Facebook gets hacked, everything downstream from that is also compromised. And I don't want that. I don't want that at all. So I would rather have, if somebody hacks into Facebook, that's all, they simply get Facebook. Instagram, my financials, my Amazon account, I'm not signing in with Facebook to get it. I don't want that. Everything's isolated. It's all in one place. Call it a password keeper, and I'm gonna draw a nice little box around a password keeper. So I want to be clear. As I'm searching the internet on Google, it'll say, do you want me to remember this password at your Google? I'm going to call it your Google. I always say no because I have a password keeper. Okay, but here's some exceptions, and this is what precipitated this video. I have Apple. I have an iCloud keychain. So I have my financial information that's stored inside my big password keeper that has really good randomized passwords. I've met my criteria. Okay, then for convenience, if I want to e-transfer you because you bought pizza tonight and I said, hey, I'll get you back, I wanted to be able to quickly send you an e-transfer. Okay, that's great. Then that's stored. I wanted to save that on my iCloud keychain because that's just convenient for me when I could use Face ID. So this was an interesting one for me. We got Touch ID. We have our pins and our phone code. So this occurred to me in a situation where I was with my nephew, and for convenience, I let my nephew use my phone because we did skip the dishes together. And I'd drive and he'd run and we'd split the profits, and I was taking my 13-year-old nephew and introducing him to business, and he's my navigator as I'm driving, so he's got to get access to the maps and punch in the address and go left and go right. We're just having fun. Obviously burns through a ton of battery, so I give him the password to my phone so when he gets back into the car after picking up the dishes or the food, he can enter the password and off we go. And it was a simple password. I intended it. For sake of convenience, I'm going to call it 9999999. Open. There's a 6-digit phone code, so that he could just quickly get it back to the maps and off we go. Then COVID happens. I'm standing there, I want to pay for something at the coffee shop, and Face ID doesn't work. Oh, because my mask is on. Password 9999999. Okay, then I can tap for my my coffee. Then I was in my. This is the existing condition for months, and then I go to send an e-transfer. Face ID doesn't work. Enter the password, and typically then I'd hit the password to my password keeper, and the password's like super long to get into my password keeper, but then I can TD Bank auto populates, ready to go. But just this time I tried something different. I said, all right, Face ID didn't work, enter passcode, and I entered 9999999, and then it auto populated my complicated bank password right in, and I logged in to my financial information. So this was an epiphany for me, and it's why I'm talking to you today. I realized that I had done a really good job password protecting these. And my financial information had this really complicated password that was as great as my phone code. That's what it was. So my 32-digit password keeper password, my 25-digit TD Bank banking password, and then my 6-digit phone code. it all came down to this. If you had my phone code, you had all of my money. That's what it was. And it was like, and my house of cards shook a little bit because I'm like, my goodness, this is an incredible vulnerability. If my nephew was bored and stole my phone, he could transfer however much money he wanted to wherever he wanted. That's just, wow. And it's not complicated to get somebody's 6-digit phone code, because I sat there at, how many times at Starbucks, you're sitting there in line, you can just watch somebody punch it in on their phone as they go to tap for their coffee. That's just, you can see it. It's just something we're so comfortable with because we think 6 digits opens our phone, and then we can click on our calculator app, the weather app, or email app, or whatever app, and that's all that we think it's protecting. But if we allow things like our keychain to hold our passwords, even though they're duplicated, it's like I have a password keeper to be protected, but I let my iCloud keychain copy my password for my convenience, then the lowest common denominator for a whole thing became this. You didn't need my 32-digit password keeper password or my 24-digit TD bank password. You needed the 6-digit phone password. And how complicated is it to hack a 6-digit phone password, especially if you steal somebody's phone and you've watched them? Like, that's just super simple. And I never want that to happen to you. But it brought out a whole bunch of questions. And if I noticed this in May this last year, I've been sitting there thinking, how do I answer this question for myself? But then how do I share this information with you? Because the same thing happens with the Touch ID on my computer. If you get my computer, well, and you hit Touch ID, your finger won't match mine, so it won't let you take anything, but it'll just ask you to enter the computer code, which is the computer PIN, which for most people is a pain in the ass, which means it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or a derivative of that. Because every day you flip it, boom, opens up, and just get through that because you want to get to the really important stuff. Okay, so the PIN on your computer controls all your documents. The PIN on your computer also allows access to everything that your iCloud keychain, or I'm sure Microsoft or Google have their own versions of this. That's all that stands between all of these really important stuff. And I had gone through the work to make sure that we got really significant passwords for all of these. Okay, Touch ID, Face ID, phone code, PIN, and you get access to most of everything that I care about. Wow. So what do you do about that? I think one of the first things that you can do, by the way, is I'm going to say set up two-factor authentication, which is just a super important thing to do. Two-factor authentication. Or MFA, multi-factor authentication. That's one of the easiest and simplest safeguards. Go through the work of making sure you have complicated passwords. Fair enough. Then set up multi-factor authentication on your really important stuff. Like if you have a drive system like a Google Drive or a Microsoft OneDrive that has super important documents in it, think wills, think corporate records, share certificates and whatnot, you can isolate those files so they're not available on your computer, and that's what we've done. So active working files that are essentially non-essential, or they're essential for daily work, but they're not like mission critical files. You can access those on your computer, but you have to actually log in to the drive intentionally and separately in order to access really important files, because then you have to access you need a really important password, the really big password, and then it asks you to multi-factor authenticate on a different device, and you have to, it's a bit more of a complicated step to get in, so you have to really want to get in there, and you have to have the access. That's how we've put a box around our things. Now I'm gonna, how do I want to communicate this to you? So I'm going to jump into just how we categorize information quickly, then I'm going to come back here. So we've decided that to make things easy for people to understand and hard for them to fail, we break information categories up into green, yellow, red, or black. Think about green as like a picture of a staff lunch on Facebook. If it's public information, it's green information. Yellow information is probably internal information, like our company logos would be yellow, things that I don't really want share. I'm not going to share with you the receipt from Amazon.ca. That's not public information. But if you got it, not critical, you can see that I bought a camping stove lately. There you go. But red information is private information. This is a signed contract. This is things that matter to me. It might be my birth certificates and things. Now, when we get into personal records, I start to move then into black. And black, these are all rook colors if you think of a deck of rook cards. Black for me is black box. So that's where you can take things like, you got to question whether or not even you want to store them online. Think birth certificates, social insurance numbers, share certificates, things that are super valuable for you. If they're not online, a computer can't hack them. It would take somebody coming into your house, finding them, and taking them, which is just so much less likely. So if you're in the red and you're in the black, it deserves a high level of encryption, and everything that's red or black in our organization is separated from the computer. It's in the cloud, in its own protected ecosystem with its own password that has to be multi-factor authenticated, that limited user access is possible. So that's how we've quarantined the things that we care about. So to keep it simple and then minimize, so if you did get access to this PIN code and access to our documents, you're getting access to our documents in the green and yellow category of documents, not in the red or black category of documents. That's how we manage that. So what we've learned is that for ease and convenience, you can use your Face IDs, your Touch IDs, things like that. Understand that that password trumps all. And I'm going to use my orange pen here. These, if you look at this as your password line, these penetrate that password line and they become the trump card. The last thing that occurred to me when I realized how to take somebody's information and get a complicated password that you don't know. This is as simple as an email. And this is how I think identity theft happens often, and then ultimately that can compound into these things being stolen, especially if you don't have multi-factor authentication set up. So if you got my bank login credentials and you're in your computer sitting somewhere in another country and you try to get into my TD Bank, great. It's going to alert my phone and ask for a multi-factor authentication. You're not going to be able to do that. Because I have multi-factor authentication set up, you're not going to have access to my phone because you're hacking from another space. If you stole my phone, you're going to have access to that because you're going to know if you know the PIN, you're going to get into my phone. You're going to go to the bank app because it's on my phone. You're going to click that. You're going to click password. It's going to look for your face. It's not going to work. You're going to hit phone pass. You're going to hit enter password, and you're going to enter 99999, and now you're in. Okay, so now you're into my banking information, and it's going to say, okay, multi-factor authentication. Then you're going to say send a text. Click. You're going to pick the number you're going to send it to, which is the phone that you have in your hand. Send text. Okay, 6-digit code. Oh, look, it just popped up. You can auto-enter that right there. Perfect. Now you're into the bank. That's how complicated. All the layers of security are defeated with this 6-digit code. I'm like, huh. So the answer to that for something like banking information is don't have the password stored on keychain with accessible that way. So you uncouple it so that if you hit the TD Bank app, you have to enter the 24-digit password that you have to either have memorized or have access to the password keeper that also isn't Face ID recognized. So the integrity of that password is maintained. So that's just really important. But then here's the other part. It's if you found my personal email, let's call it personal@gmail.com, and you wanted to get into my Amazon account, but you got access to my email account. And this is the one that struck me and brought me here today, is that email. The reset email for all of your accounts. If I have your reset email, I can probably get into most of your accounts. And why is that? Because when I log into your Canada Revenue Agency portfolio, I'm going to enter your personal@gmail.com. Oh, forgot password. Okay, so it's going to send an email to your reset email, which is your personal@gmail.com. Oh, then I'm going to click the link to authenticate. Then I'm going to enter a new password, the one I want to remember. So I now have access to your thing because I could reset. So I can do that to your Amazon. I could do that to your phone provider. I can do that to your Facebook, your Instagram. Because if you have access, or if I have access to your email, I have access to resetting all of your information, because it's kind of like that phone thing. If I can send myself a text to do my own multi-factor authentication, I own the system. So I can just reset my own passwords on your account if I get access to your email, which meant that this is mission critical. This is mission critical. This is mission critical. And this is also mission critical. The issue I had is that I treated none of these things as valuable, because this mission critical piece feeds up here, and feeds up here. I treated none of these as critical, because the reality of the system, the reality of the situation is that I use my personal@gmail as my, like, when I'm shopping for camping stoves. So I don't do really important stuff on it. It's just a whatever. And I don't send emails to my bank. So I don't see how these two are coupled the way that they really are. And I do all my important information, signed contracts, through my business@gmail.com account. Just using that as an example, So the business account is where I get all my attention. It's where I have the complicated passwords. It's where I might segment it off my phone. I might have it access, whatever. I put all my energy because that's where the business is spending its focus. Not realizing that if I get locked out of my business account and everything associated with my business@gmail.com account, the backup reset password is my personal@gmail.com account. That's my, so I don't get locked out of one, I have the backup. And I spent no time and attention on that complicated password, because it's just this, I don't do anything important except send my mom, Happy Mother's Day, so it just didn't get the attention. And my phone, I do that so many times in a day, it needed to be convenient for me. And then the concept of Face ID is like, let's just make it all accessible so that it's all available quickly. And then my computer pin, oh man, I just want to get to work. I got that email that I want to send. I got the client I got to respond to. I got the document I got to work through. I got my project I'm working on. And this defined all this. And like I said, so the house of cards was shook a little bit. So I'm saying all that because I want you to see how the systems interconnect. I want you to see that that passwords are important, but how we manage and protect our passwords is also important. And you've heard the weakest link of the chain. The chain is only as strong as the weakest link. These are our weak links, and what these little things allow access to all of our important things, unless we very intentionally uncouple them. You can uncouple them, it's possible, and still have a great, smooth experience in life. Just be intentional. If you don't care that your phone code gets to your Snapchat, then don't worry about uncoupling it. If you do care because you're a celebrity with followers, then uncouple them because your information's worth protecting. Just know it. Know that it's coupled, and then choose to keep it coupled or uncouple it if that's what's important to you. So I feel like I can go on and on, but I want you to cover your passwords, and knowing that just because you put a complicated password wall in doesn't mean that your information is protected by complicated passwords. That's the point of the story. Thank you for sticking with us. Sincerely, I hope this helps, because I want you to have a happy, healthy, prosperous life. And when people try to steal your stuff, that just never feels good. And frankly, computers make it anonymous and simple for criminals to do things that are just really inconvenient these days. And it doesn't have to happen to you or us. And all that to say, be well, and catch you again soon.